Okay, spot illustrations are kind of the bread and butter of most digital artists working today, especially freelance artists, especially those that call themselves illustrators. An illustrator comes from the term, a much older term, which was to bring light to something else. The illuminators, the painters of the Gospels during the Holy Roman Empire, they were called illuminators because they would take the Christian gospel and they would paint their pictures to go along with it, bringing light to that word. Right? The difference between illustration and illumination is that illustrations are made to be reproduced, which is why digital artists often are in the realm of digital artists, because they are making something to be reproduced, and everything now that is reproduced is filtered through a digital process at some point. We're going to learn a little bit about that printing process and making things ready for professional printing, not just inkjet printing. And so, for instance, you can go on hundreds and hundreds of sites. You can go on DeviantArt, you can go on artist websites. When you're looking for an artist to present on, perhaps, you'll find things like this. They'll offer, how do you commission a work? And they'll have different types of work for different amounts, very reasonable amounts. And sometimes these are students. Sometimes these are working illustrators that are just trying to do a little something fun on the side. So we have character designs, we have black and white, right? Notice that in all of these, shape is incredibly important. And then we have flat color. This is an example of what we'll be doing with this assignment. Notice how each of these illustrations is a free floating form. They're not contained in a scene, in a rectangle. They could go right on a t-shirt, they could go right on a poster. Like a logo, they're meant to work with any background. Unlike a logo, they have a lot more variation in their color, and they wouldn't work as well without color. When we get into digital painting, you'll notice that the outlines go away. So we're working with what's called digital coloring. The most simple is flat color, like this, where just each local color, like a red dress, is one solid red, and then it has black outline, like old Sunday comic strips. But we'll learn some other coloring styles as well. But we'll all start with flat color. When you digitally paint, the outline goes away entirely and it gets replaced. So we'll be doing that a little bit later. See another one. This really applies to digital too. This is a professional character design portfolio. Look, complete with its own property flag that accompanies all their sketches. Now this is a spot illustration. It's a character design, and it's going to fit the theme we're doing this semester, which is monsters. But that would work on a t-shirt, that would work on a hat, that would work on a poster, right? Especially with text around it. But it could be even more dynamic. You see, it feels very horizontal and flat on the bottom, which maybe makes it not the most dynamic it could be for a poster or for a t-shirt. And it gets built up through sketching and then outlining and then coloring behind. But this is not flat color. This is what's called duotone color. And you'll see the brownish metal color, that's the flat color of that object, that local color, is split into a light and a dark version. So that's called duotone color. And on and on and on. You see some 3D modeling in these portfolios, a lot of sketches. Something I'd like to see more of, because I got to see them in your sketchbooks for digital art too. Scan some of your sketches, or include some of your sketches in your portfolio that are done digitally. So we see some more of the process, even if they weren't requirements. They help us understand everything a lot better. So here's a great example of what we're going to try to do with this assignment. Lots of different thumbnail sketches for different creature designs. These are not composites. These are your own ideas, your own stylizations, your own way of making the world. And then you'll find kind of the most engaging one. You'll create outlines, and then you'll color them. Now, these look like they don't have outlines. But we're going to learn. This is closer to what's called, this is soft edge duotone color. The outline is there. It's just been turned from black into a color. And in this case, into a gradated color. And that's what we call color holds. But this is still not digital painting, Because as long as there's an outline there to color behind, whether it's a colored outline or a solid black outline, it's digital coloring. And coloring comes after all the other steps. Here you see the outlines are all in this nice blue color. It's a nice example of digital coloring. And here we have very soft edge duotone with these greenish blue colors and yellow. And on and on and on. Okay, here's another kind of professional site. This is the kind of stuff as a digital artist you want to put into the world so people know who you are. And this is kind of brilliant. So this guy is showing his web portfolio as kind of a video game. Let's see. We want the interactive resume. And of course, all of these have to be designed as little, his character as a little spot illustration. And then he can animate it and do all this stuff. And his character is very much flat colored, but look at some of this environment. That Chrysler building there, it's a nice example of duotone color. You notice the light and the dark of each local color. This makes me want to hire this guy. Now these are all skills we've actually learned. The only difference is he did all of this as a vector and then animated it in Flash, which is a vector animating tool. But you can see the thinking behind it is very much the same as flat illustration coloring. It's just there's no strokes on the vector shapes, so no outline. And that's it. All right, so then what do I put out in the world? So this is my website, and I do a lot of different things. And I do fine art and I do illustration. But if you go to my illustration page, this is kind of my store. And the thing I like most about this site, Redbubble, is that you can put stuff up here that you don't make public. You just make it kind of for yourself. And so it's a great way to put up stuff that you think is funny. And you can buy your own products, you know, like Putin on the Ritz. But spot illustrations are kind of the bread and butter of these kind of sites. And I'll sell these stickers, and they also work as t-shirt designs. And gosh, there's so many different things, right? Just because they were designed the right way. And most of them are digital coloring with an outline. So if you look at George Burns in Hell, you guys probably don't remember George Burns, but this is a classic example. You have black outline and then duotone flat color behind it. This is actually done as a demo for this class way back when. Why I wanted to end with this is that your outlines do not need to be tiny and thin. It's better to think of it as line work than outlines. Because here, that black, all those black shapes, that is the inking. That is the line work on top. And then the color just goes behind. And the more heavily you use your ink work, the less coloring you need. So spot illustrations are incredibly versatile, very helpful for a wide range of clients and purposes. So we're going to work on a theme of monsters. And whatever you want to do with that, you're welcome to do with it. It's for your portfolio. I don't have any agenda in mind for it. But this is how I recommend you start. Basic shapes are always very helpful. And then as you sketch, you kind of figure out where you want to put your visual emphasis. If you're going for a dynamic pose, which monsters lends itself to, I mean, you could do a very symmetrical, very straightforward graphic design monster, that would be fine too. But it's nice to play with the eye movement. It's not just about putting in lots of detail, it's about getting something effective. Now this is dealing with the main proportions. You might think of light source. You might think of where you're going to use the inking a little bit stronger in full shapes other than just line work. And that's called full bleed inking. Here the line work is all done. That might be done in tracing paper. I'll show you how you can do it with the Blob Brush in Illustrator. And then here the full bleed inking is put in. And then once you have that, it's not that difficult to drop in color behind it. And this is flat color on the skirt here, flat color on the helmet, flat color on this breastplate because it's just brown with the black. The only place there's duotone color is on the cape behind, which actually, it just goes between a light and a dark, and it's duotone because it works between two values within the same color. So you could have like 12 steps between this dark and that light, but since the light and dark are from the same local color, it's still duotone. It would only be full spectrum color if it went from like yellow to purple, like from one color to a different color, not just a different value. All right. So spot illustrations, again, should be free floating. And they can go on any kind of poster background. That makes them well suited to a t-shirt design as well. But in assignment 8, you're going to mix your spot illustration with some sort of text treatment to make a poster design. So here are some posters. So this makes a nice little spot illustration. And then the text treatment just finishes it off, and then we add a background to make a poster. Whether they're complicated or simple, you get to decide. But yours will need to start with an outline. So as we're working with it, we're not going to be finished with it. This would be the spot illustration here, but we wouldn't be finished with it until we also added the text with assignment 8. And at the end, we'll have a finished poster. All right. And this is also very true of how digital art works in the professional world. This is a commissioned spot illustration for an article. I don't know why it's so slow to load. And this is the process. So the art director gives you what the content will be. You mock up a sketch. You're going to be uploading your sketch. You mock up kind of a color solution. You refine it. You put it together. These aren't working right now, so I will let it go. But let's get started on it. So for the theme of monsters, this is assignment 7, spot illustration for poster and t-shirt. It's a nice way to think of it. I decided I liked what we did at the beginning of the semester, trying to do a self-portrait as a Pokemon. So I was sketching with that, making it more than just a head to a full body. Then I was sketching some more, different variations. And I realized while I was doing that kind of stuff, our campus mascot, Nico the Nighthawk, I'd like to make a Pokemon version of him. So I did this, looking at different bird Pokemon and make my own version. And eventually kind of cleaned it up, or brought it down to these two, selected this, cleaned it up enough just by scanning it, that now I can bring it into a program like Illustrator. And I have just a raster image of my sketch. And then over the top of it, I can start inking it. So this is using the Blob Brush. And what I love about the Blob Brush in Illustrator is that everything that you add to it is just like using an ink pen, becomes part of the same path, the same shape. And as long as those shapes are connected like this, it's all together. And all can be altered and played with at any time. So I'm going to continue that. And once I have a clean vector, I can get rid of my sketch, and it'll just be beautiful line work, which I can take into Photoshop and then color behind. That's how we'll get started.